The next big expansion for Throne and Liberty begins in less than 3 weeks. This is where we get the whole new map update with the area called Talandre and an absolute ton of new different gear, which also includes weapons and accessories. So in this video, I want to show my theory crafted builds for the Scorpion for PvP. There'll be a link to my quest log in the video description below, and this covers a max hit build, a max evasion build, and then looking at a hybrid build, a mix between the two. And we'll discuss which you'll actually want to be going for with this new Talandre update. Something to keep in mind is PvP is never a one thing fits all. It's a very rock, paper, scissors game. If I'm always playing scissors, sometimes I'll run into the paper and absolutely crush it. Another time I'll run into the rock and just absolutely get wrecked myself. You can of course try and build a hybrid setup, which is then gonna try and beat both the rock and the scissors, but it's never going to be as good as, say, scissors beating the paper. It's going to be a little bit worse in both areas, but at least give you a good fighting chance. However, gear isn't everything, and you're going to have skills which allow you to also counter other people's abilities. So if we simply look at a max hit build with everything that tier 2 can offer us, we're gonna find some insanely high values here. Hit, we can get over 2,700. Evasions, we're still putting them at a pretty solid position at base over 2,500. But you can stack a bunch of bonus effects here, like from the Solar Stone and the Lunar Stone from the new artifact system. In game it will look like this. You simply have 6 slots and you put those artifact pieces in those slots, and they give you certain bonuses, side effects, and ultimately the Solar and Lunar Stone are what can give you some very nice effects. This Lunar Stone giving you on hit a 5% chance to increase your hit by 80 for 3 seconds. Now on Crossbow and Dagger, you're hitting an absolute ton of time with these skills. Your hit rate is off the charts compared to any other class, and so honestly this should be up nearly all the time. And then you have the Solar Stone, which can shred the evasion from enemies. This is 60 per stack, stacking up 5 times. So yeah, 300 evasion shred, which is effectively like bonus 300 hit chance. So if we then look at the evasion bonuses, Shadow Walker, as we all know, 690 for 6 seconds to your ranged and magic evasion, and then detection. This coming from the Crossbow, whenever you get hit, a 41% chance, you're going to have this easily up nearly all the time when getting attacked. You'll increase all your evasion by 410. Then you also have Ultimate Power and Mirage. These are new effects that come from the new mastery system. Now in these builds also do be sure to remove the old mastery when having a look, otherwise your results will be flawed and not representative of what we'll actually get, which is this system. So the max you can spend is 200 points per weapon, and we go for all of these nodes. You can see the exact amount of stats we're gaining through there, but we have this ultimate power, which I'm actually not 100% sure how it's going to work, but it could give us upwards of 300 evasion for magic and ranged. And then Mirage, which is super powerful. It should allow us, whenever using a mobility skill, to gain 200 to all evasion for 3 seconds. So if we combine all of that, yes, we end up with an absolute ton of hit chance, over 3,100 for both. That's important when you want to be using those skills for damage, and ranged and magic evasion are over 4,000. Again, this build only focuses on 2 because we're going to have to choose to be weak against one of them. And here we take melee. That's just how the game works best. If you want to min-max, say, hit, you're going to have to take a sacrifice on another defense stat. So we choose melee evasion, which means yes, we are vulnerable to those melee users. We will be vulnerable to those great swords, those daggers, and those spears. However, I would much prefer to be weaker to somebody who has to be in my face rather than somebody who can hit me from a mile away. But this is just one instance of a build that you can work towards. And we can of course take that with then the no epic runes or trait resonance, because this build right here has resonance effect, which basically allows you to gain an additional trait on all of your gear, along with, yes, purple runes, which we most likely will not get with the Talandre update. So we need to take it a step back, and we need to then have a look what our stats will be and what kind of gear options we want to go for. Now, the gear itself is not changing. I still go for all of this. The stats go down a little bit. We can then even look at it without any nebula accessories or even field boss gear, and our stats are down again a little bit, but still very, very competitive. Looking at that breakdown, you can see the different comparisons here. So maxed out with purple runes and resonance is giving you at max, including all your like bonus effects, would be these. And then without the resonance and out the purple runes or even nebula or field boss equipment, we're down to these values, which is still a very, very reasonable amount of hit, because again, everybody else is also going to be lacking on the like maximum evasion because they don't have those min-max items just yet. In terms of the gear options here, we're not going for, say, the archboss weapons. Honestly, I don't think you should build around those unless, yeah, you seriously have a ton of Lucent saved up or are prepared to spend thousands in Lucent to get them. So the next best are the Burkants, and that's what I'm putting in these builds. Now you can see when we do switch here to say no nebula or field boss, we switch just two of our accessories. We're going to the Lord's Necklace and the Paladins instead of this Great Tree or the Big Leaf. You can check exactly where they come from, so just viewing the database, the Great Tree sap comes from Giant Cordy, the new arch boss, while the Big Leaf's tree comes from the field boss Pakilo. The rest of these items, even on the maxed out build, all just come from dungeons. And even all of this armor is super accessible, none from field bosses. So it should be a very easy build to set up. And yeah, it gives you an insane amount of stats when you include, say, all of those passive effects. And even at base, it's really, really solid. However, you might want to take an alternative route to get, say, triple evasion. So in all cases, you're well protected. Well, that's where we look at like max evasion. We do change up our gear quite a bit here, and we put a heavy focus on that evasion. Now you can see melee evasion is through the roof at nearly 4,000. Ranged and magic evasion about 2,600, 2,700. But what we sacrifice in this is our hit compared to previous build. This one, the first we looked at, is like maxing out as much hit as possible while maintaining a reasonable amount of evasion. We're not ditching it completely. We just become vulnerable to, say, one set of weapons, which is the melees, which is arguably the best way to go because, yes, unless your server is dominant on melees, having that protection from somebody you, say, can't hit back is generally a lot better. Those bow and staff users are definitely going to outrange you. But jumping back to the max evasion build, you can see it's an absolutely crazy amount you're gaining there. If we look at again the breakdown and the total max stats you're going to end up with when you consider your like bonus effects, you can see again we have that solar stone with the like evasion shred, which is effectively more hit chance for us. And then we have the evasion bonus effects here. And we now take, say, the Guardian Lunar Stone. Again, that being an artifact effect. And this is whenever you're hit, you'll increase all of those evasion stats by 30 for 3 seconds. And this stacks up 10 times. So you can effectively gain 300 evasion here. However, the stacks are removed when you successfully evade. So it's sometimes you won't have it at all. Sometimes you'll have the max effect. And ultimately, it's just to help you evade attacks. It's not a true 300 bonus. But yes, our maximum does increase up. You can, of course, like remove that 300 if you think it's not reasonable. Same with the ultimate power. I'm not fully sure how that thing is going to work. I would assume it gives you 300 evasion while you have nature's power, but we'll have to test it. But yes, using all of this gear then here, including the trait resonance and purple runes, you can end up with a phenomenal 4,800 melee evasion, 4,600 ranged evasion, and 4,500 magic evasion. Absolutely crazy. Your hit chance is like completely the bare minimum here, and at base it's only like 1,700. So it's going to depend what people you're running up against, whether this build can work to you. If your enemies have a lot of evasion, well, they're going to basically counter you by neither of you dying very quickly. You have an absolute ton of survivability with your insane levels of evasion, but you don't have a lot of hit chance to be able to break through that evasion if somebody else also stacks a ton of evasion. So this would be great if you're, say, running into some endurance users who don't actually stack a lot of evasion. But then, yes, we need to look at it without our purple runes, without the resonant effects, and also without the field boss or nebula gear. And that's simply, again, just switching that big tree leaf from a field boss over to this paladin's ring from like some open world dungeons. Super easy to get. And what you end up then is this comparison. So the maxed out total stats would be up here, and then the no resonance, no field bosses or anything, we're still at a insane amount. We just lose a bit of hit chance there and a bit of melee evasion, mainly because that resonant effect seriously allows you to get a lot of evasion, because you can see on all the armor pieces you basically gain another 80, and you can decide to throw that on melee evasion. And then also having purple runes gives that bit of a boost to each of them as well. But finally we jump to, say, the hybrid builds. If you want to be getting a mix and match of both, well, this is what I would recommend here. So this one's again with all the full resonance and purple runes, and then we have another with, say, blue runes and without resonance. You can see the stats here again, and if we compare them with all of our extra bonuses we can get, you can see it's still a very reasonable 2,600 on your hit chance there, and evasions are well over 3,700. So this is still super good survivability and a very good amount of hit chance too. But it's not like the maximum. You're not the max in either case, so somebody could stack maybe enough hit chance, 3,500 to 3,700, and manage to counter you, or they could stack themselves over 3,000 evasion and you will struggle to like hit them. But again, maxing out that evasion can be good if people have a ton of hit chance and you want to be countering that, and say they don't have a lot of evasion themselves, then you can still do well by sacrificing that hit chance. Or you can go, yeah, full into the hit chance, try to counter anybody who's stacking evasion, and still have a ton of evasion on just ranged and magic. You're then weak to melee. So what should you be doing then? This is quite a lot of different options. Well, my take on it is probably just go with the hit build. It's going to be the most reliable in dealing a ton of damage, and you just need to get good. You gotta learn to avoid those melee users. Now, Spear is going to be a ton less threatening because they're going to have to build a lot of hit, and they're going to have to be very close to be able to make use of their javelins, because now that duration is only 10 seconds. Once they gain their stacks by hitting somebody at melee range, they then only have 10 seconds to throw javelins before they expire. So you, as a Scorpion, should be able to be mobile enough and deal enough damage quickly enough to kill them before they become such a real threat to you. However, if you're in GVGs and you're struggling in large scale and those spears are still dominating you, maybe you want to stack a bunch of melee evasion. And I think it's a bit overkill to go with, say, the max evasion build here. You do get a ton of survivability, but you will struggle if you run into people who also have a lot of evasion, because you don't have that great hit chance. That's where a hybrid build might be better for you. You still get a load of evasion, but you will be weaker to anybody who has stacked a ton of hit chance. So overall, I hope this at least shows you some templates of what's possible, and just be aware in terms of the food here. You of course won't be able to rely on this chocolate here with the 90 extra hits, so you're going to be using like PvP hit chance bonuses, this simple one, and yeah, it's just selecting that will make it so it doesn't actually display the hit chance here. But yes, just be aware again, we will very likely not get purple runes day one of tier 2, and do not build around Nebula accessories. However, none of these are actually nebula accessories, but this one's like a field boss one and this one's an arch boss one. Still pretty inaccessible day one. Again, if you have the ability to access quest log, you can simply click here to view the database and see exactly where these are coming from. Like this is Chapel of Madness, a dungeon, and that's where like most of the gear is actually coming from in my builds, just these dungeons. Yes, it's still not going to be the easiest thing to get, but it's reliable. Like you can run the dungeons, you have the drop chance at getting those gear items, and if yes, you somehow fail to get the item you want, you always have the possibility of getting these streak breaker chests, spending 80 of those soul shards and simply getting the selection chest with that item. The Berkant weapons are also really easy to get, they just require that dimensional essence. You can see the daggers here as well. But of course, the giant Cordy crossbow will be the one to get with that insanely powerful bonus effect. It's just an arch boss weapon and will be inaccessible to the majority of you for a long time, if not indefinitely. And in terms of the daggers, I would highly recommend the Tevent daggers because they also have a super useful effect resetting your camouflage cloak, which is just super powerful for survivability. You just get the kill and then simply disappear. But the base damage bonus from Berkants from both the crossbow and the daggers is not something to scoff at and will help you a ton. And even for PvE, they are pretty much the best ones to have. But again, that's everything for my builds. You can see the stat breakdown here as well in the description. I may update it a bit as I actually did realize I missed some perception points here to get that to 70, and same in the no field boss, no nebula one. It's actually worth going for that on this same max hit build, which does mean you get a little bit more maximum hit as well, which is great. Again, this is just theory crafting. I have not played tier 2 on Crossbow and Dagger in a PvP sense. This just comes from the knowledge of building characters and experience from tier 1. Personally, I'm going to go with a heavy hit build because I just know people are going to be stacking the evasions, and in tier 1 it's really dominant with daggers as that secondary weapon for those DPS, and thus they usually stack evasion. But that's it for now. Thanks for watching and we'll see you all around. Goodbye for now.